welcome to one more English lesson. As we always do, we're going to move on our study, the First World War. So once again, thank you very much for everybody that are here with me today. So, I hope everybody's okay, and let's go into the topic, okay? If you remember last lesson, we were talking about like not the beginning actually, we just talked about one more fact of the failures of the League of Nations, right? And today we're gonna go deeper into that, okay, because we're gonna see like the official collapse of the League of Nations, right? So this is what we're gonna check it out today. We're gonna see some facts that led to this situation, and I think everybody has the same opinion about that, right? Since the League of Nations was created, we have seen that they had some good ideas, let's say, right? I think they had good intentions, right? But the problem was they couldn't fulfill, like, I guess more than half of the intentions that they had, right? They were created for some reasons, for some purposes, but they didn't achieve that purpose, right? So this is what we're gonna check it out. So go with me, okay? Follow me and let's go. I'm gonna share my screen with you right now, right? And then just let's begin. Okay, so here we have this beginning, right? This first part of the title here, the collapse of the League of Nations. And then let's move on. Follow me. So the League of Nations lost most of its influence after the Abyssinia crisis. This Abyssinia crisis was what we studied last lesson, right? And became largely irrelevant when the Second World War broke out in 1939. So you need to know the different arguments for why it collapsed. Okay, so pay attention on that. You need to know the different arguments for why it collapsed. So do you understand that? When we say that we have to check like the different arguments, so it gives us an idea, like maybe they didn't really agree, like what was the real reason for the ending of the League of Nations, for the collapse of the League of Nations, for the destruction. Because when we use that word collapse, it means that it stopped working, it was destroyed, it failed, right? So this is the word of collapse. So if they're gonna show us some arguments, so maybe we have these two options: or they didn't know the real reason why the League of Nations collapsed, or maybe there were more than one, maybe there are two, three, there was more than one reason for the collapsing of the League of Nations. And this is what you're gonna check it out now. Okay, so let's read one by one, right? And just follow me. Let's check it out then. So coming back here, we're gonna see now this part here, like the League of Nations, and let's go on. So the League didn't achieve its original aims. Again, do you remember these words? Original aims, right? It was the original goal, right? It was the main reason why it was created. Okay, so let's see. We have 1, 2, 3. Number 1. Follow me. I'm gonna read all these three here. The League aimed to act against aggression, encourage nations to discuss their disputes, and work towards disarmament. These aims were all intended to prevent another war. The League failed to do this. And how do we know that? Because the Second World War started in 1939. Okay, so analyzing this first idea, right, of one possible reason for the end of the League of Nations, for the ending of the League of Nations, is that basically when the League of Nations was created, there was a reason for that, which was these two that I just read for you. I'm gonna read here: to discuss countries' disputes. For example, let's suppose one country was having some issues, some problem with another country, and if they were part of the League of Nations, or even if they weren't, I guess that they could, how can I say that? They were able to interfere even in countries that were, not part of the League of Nations, but this was one of the reasons. Interfere when there was a problem between two countries. Yeah, they would be some kind of judge, right? And secondly, about the disarmament, right? Which means maybe some gun control, like just keep, maybe put a more strict rule, yeah, maybe to kind of a control, like to have more, what is a good word for that? Maybe to have more, yeah, I think there is no other word than control. It's basically to control the access, yeah, to guns, I mean, regarding the other countries, right? So these were the reasons in this first part. This is what we understand, right? So if if some years later the Second World War started, it means, I mean, obviously that this first intention of the League of Nations failed, I mean, greatly, right? It was a really, really bad failure. Okay, so this is the first point here. So let's go to the second one. Follow me. And in the second one here, the league did have some success in settling disputes in the 1920s. Example, Upper Silesia. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the League of Nations, wasn't only, like, failure. They had some successes, like in some of, like, maybe trying to put some peace between some conflicts that happened, like the example that I gave here, the Upper Silesia, which was one of the talk that we have studied before. Okay, but I mean, it was really a small thing comparing for what happens, I mean, after that, right? So this is the point 2, and then the point 3 here we have, it also managed to encourage cooperation on social issues. When we say social issues, yeah, when we talk about this word, we are talking about social problem, like poverty, like lack of how can I say, like a good healthy system, like lack of food for people. It's when we talk about social issues, is that kind of problems that we have socially. For example, in Brazil we have a lot of people that has no food, so this is the point here. Okay, and it helped to improve the lives of ordinary people. Ordinary, I mean, it's common people, yeah, common, normal people. Normal, this is a strange word to realize. Normal people, when I say normal people, in a sense that is the popular ones, right? It's not someone very famous. It's not the president of a country. It's not the prime minister. It's like us, normal people who has a job, who lives, okay, normally, and ordinary people around the world. But this wasn't its main purpose, right? So this is, I think this is a very that's a very good point. Yeah, they had some success in some points, but I mean, it wasn't really the main aim of the League of Nations. The main aim of the League of Nations was to prevent new wars and to keep, and to promote peace in the world. So and these 2 points, which were like vital, I think for the success of the League of Nations, they couldn't do that. Yeah, they couldn't keep like this point. So of course I agree. Yeah, like only by analyzing these 3 points here, I think everybody agrees that, I mean, it didn't really work. Okay, but we have more, so follow me. Let's go to the next part here. Okay, and after that we're gonna read, some say that the league was, go with me, was doomed from the start. Do you know doomed? Do you know what is that word? Okay, so I'm gonna write here. Let me change the color. Give me a second. I'm gonna use green as well. Okay, so just to be the same. So when something is doomed, I mean, it is fated to end, to fail. Okay, so when we say, I didn't like that color very much. Let me change that. Wait a minute, guys. Wait a minute. Okay, so when we say that something is doomed, it means it is fated to end, to fail. Okay, so for example, okay, let's suppose, okay, we have this new product, but I believe, I mean, it is doomed. What I mean with that is that it's not gonna work, you know. We can start that, but probably it's not gonna be successful. So that's the idea, okay? So this is the other word that it's fated, yeah? Está, né, está fadado a acabar, está fadado a dar errado. That's the point here, okay? From the start. And when we use that word from the start, it means since the beginning, yeah, they had problems. So let's analyze that, right? So we have these 3 points here. Let's see if we understand that. Number one, the league the League of Nations had, actually, right? The League of Nations had to defend the Treaty of Versailles, even though many of the members themselves thought the treaty was unfair. This associated the League with unpopular diplomacy from the start. I mean, that's very obvious, right? Since the league started, I mean, one of the things that they had to do is to, as we had here, right? They have to like give support to this Treaty of Versailles because they created that, right? I mean, the League of Nations, the members of the League of Nations, they created the Treaty of Versailles, and I mean, and we remember, right? When we studied that, we saw that the Treaty of Versailles had good points, but I mean, had really some, I mean, maybe half of the points that, or it was unachievable, I mean, it was impossible to do, or it was not fair with all the countries. So that's a negative point, right? And moving on. And after that, we have the next one. When the USA refused to join, America didn't want to join, and Britain and France had a very difficult task. They had to support the League's finances and military, but they weren't very strong themselves. Germany and Russia weren't allowed to join the League at the start. This excluded two powerful nations which could have contributed to the League. Okay, so this is the point that we're analyzing here, right? So what is the point here? So since the beginning, we had the refusal of America to join the League of Nations, and furthermore, Germany, because Germany was considered like the big bad guy of the war, right, of the First World War. So they were considering guilt of that. So of course they couldn't join. And Russia, like it wasn't like maybe, I don't know, like a trustable country, as we say. Okay, so the point, what I mean here, what we can read here is that there were lack of members. I mean, powerful members. So I guess the most powerful ones was like Britain, the Empire of Britain and France, and then I mean, basically you had more people, like you had more, not more people, but you had more strong nations outside of the league than inside of the league. And then when we have that situation, I mean, just it doesn't help, right? To build a strong group, a strong league. So that's the second reason. And the third one, actually, the league's organization made decision-making complicated and lengthy. Britain and France didn't lead strongly and were often very slow to do things. Okay, so that's the point. One information, just a correction, okay? There is this word here, right, with Y in the end, okay? The pronunciation of this word, as you can see that here, okay? It's lengthy, okay? Because there is a Y in the end, we go lengthy. This is how to pronounce that, okay? Just one extra information. But making some comments, right, about what we just read here. I mean, they made difficult to make decisions because I don't know if you remember that. I think today decide something, they had to get all the members of the league and put together, and they would maybe vote, make this, or this was the process, and it took a long time and it was complicated to do. So, and it was, I mean, that's the meaning of the word lengthy, okay? It was too long. It wasn't something quickly and easy to do, okay? Because it had to, I mean, to join. It had to get all the countries that belonged to this League of Nations together. Okay, and I mean, and Britain and France, they didn't. Yeah, they weren't good leaders. And why they were leaders? Because they were the strongest. Yeah, one of the they were the strongest, I guess. Yeah, I think that there was no other stronger member of the league besides Britain and France. And I mean, and the point, yeah, to summarize it, things were complicated and too slow. So I mean, only bad points, right? Only bad points. So this is the point that we're gonna analyze here, and this was the second theory, the second possibility. And now we're gonna go to the third one, which is, some say that, let's go one here. Okay, I'm gonna just organize. Okay, so let's go. Third one. Some say the league failed because it made bad decisions. I mean, we talked a little bit about that before. So follow me. Number one, the league needed to show a strong response to aggressors, but didn't have the strength to do it. None of the members wanted to risk their lives of their troops after the First World War. Of course, I mean, this what means show strong response to aggressors? Means that when a country decided to attack another one or to do something that was against the rules of this League of Nations, they should, because it was supposed to be their job, right? Because they were the League of Nations, like the police of the nations. They should interfere strongly in that, like they should do something quickly and hard, like, okay, so you are doing something that is against the law that we have made here, so or you stop or you're going to be punished. But it actually didn't happen, right? We could see that in Manchuria and after with Mussolini, right? So it was a failure. Moving on. And after that, ambitious members. Example, Mussolini. Remember, we talked about that last class. Mussolini was an ambitious guy. He wanted to invade another country. I mean, and this action was against the rule that they had. So, and then, I mean, these ambitious members like Mussolini, they weren't dealt with. They weren't dealt with. Do you understand? Dealt with. Não era, né? Eles não lidaram com ele, né? Não foi lidado. They weren't dealt with strongly enough. Quando a gente fala strongly enough, means eles não lidaram com ele da forma que deveria. Yeah? If someone is going against the law, is doing something that is harming, like that is causing problems, you should act, I mean, quickly and strongly against that to solve that problem, right? But as we could see, it not only didn't happen, but also, I mean, with the Mussolini situation, I mean, they kind of gave support to that, right? So this makes no sense. Of course, the League of Nations were step by step, I mean, going to this collapse situation, right? And then let's move on. Continuing. And the third one, too many members didn't keep to the covenant. When they were challenged, they simply left the league. Example, Germany and Japan in 1933 and Italy in 1937. And remember, right, when we say covenant here, right? Remember the definition of this word? When we talk about the covenant, the definition of covenant is like it is a legal agreement made by people or by some group, right? But I mean, made by some people that people have to follow. That's the point, like to make it simple. But covenant here is to remember it was the rule made by the League of Nations, the agreement that they had. So one way to describe that agreement, we can give the name, for example, like the Treaty of Versailles, but also we can call this covenant. Se a gente fosse fazer isso em português, por exemplo, um acordo aí legal no sentido de lei, né? Ok? Seguindo a lei. Legal tem o significado que a gente, nossa, nice, right? Mas legal, né, in English, e algo legal em português também é algo que está dentro da lei, é algo que foi, né, que se tornou lei nesse point, okay, by some agreement or something, right? And moving on, and we have the next one here, number 4, and instead of cooperation, the league let the old system of alliances creep back, even between members. Wow, that is a good topic, right? Interesting. So and when we see this word creep back, yeah, so the league let the old system of alliances creep back. What does that mean? It means that since they have created, yeah, this League of Nations, like they had, okay, so now we're gonna cooperate, we're gonna work as a team. But what happened actually as it went on, yeah, as the time moved on, is that some countries, they started to make, you know, that kind of alliances. And but what is the difference between alliance and cooperation, mutual cooperation? Is that alliances, basically they start to make small groups inside of the League of Nations, you know, like, okay, so Britain, France, and another one, we're gonna make this small group, yeah, maybe it's what we call in Portuguese panelinha, right? Okay, so this, and then it became what it was before, and it was totally the opposite. It was totally against the main idea of the creation of the League of Nations. Okay, the idea was everybody work together and not make small groups inside of the League of Nations, right? So that is the point. Then let's go to number 5 here. And number 5, the Manchurian crisis was a turning point. This is an important word, turning point. Do you see that? Turning point means momento importante, né? Momento ali crucial, momento virada, né? Quando algo muda, quando algo, né? Algo grande acontece e muda a direção do que está acontecendo. So, the Manchurian crisis was this turning point. The league failed to resist Japan. I mean, to do something against Japan, yeah, because they were like interfering. They were not following the rule, not following the League of Nations. How can I say, covenant, right? The rule that they had. And after that, countries began to increase their armed forces. So what is the problem with increasing their armed forces? Remember that one of the rules of the League of Nations was to have that, how can I say, gun control, yeah? So if each country start to get more, to evolve, to build more guns, I mean, they are not following what is expected to do, right? To be followed. So they began increases their armed forces, and they had lost faith in the League and expected war. So if they lost their faith, right? So what does that mean? It means that they don't believe in the League of Nations as a protector, as a judge, as a balance keeper of the situation, right? So, and of course, because of that, they were expecting war. So I mean, total failure, total collapse of the League of Nations, right? And then we have one more, which is, I believe, is the last one. Yeah, and let's analyze that now. Let's go on. So, and we had this 4th part here, which is the League had to deal with. Remember that deal with, lidar com, issues, problems that it couldn't control. Okay, so what is the point here? What does that mean? Is that they had to deal with maybe some situations that they had no power, no way to control the situation. So if you can't control, you have no power, I mean, you have to just leave it happen, right? And if the League of Nations was the kind of a polis, yeah, the protector, yeah, like the judge of the situation, so it would be very, I mean, not funny, right? Was not good, that situation as we analyze. But let's go on. Let's see what were the points here. Number 1, in the 1930s, the Depression made the political situation tougher, more difficult worldwide. Number two, the depression, which was the economic crisis, made the problems with the league's structure much worse. I mean, it got even worse. Weakened countries made countries less powerful. Yeah, this is the meaning of the word weaken. Yeah, this is not from the weekend, não é de fim de semana, mas é de que, né, ficou mais fraco, né, enfraqueceu. Weakened countries, ou seja, os países fracos, were finding it hard to deal with their own problems. So they weren't able to respond to international problems. Okay? Very, very good. So again, so fazendo a correction here, right? So weakened countries, this word here, aqui são os países que eram, né, que estavam ali enfraquecidos por causa das situations. Yeah, they were finding it hard. Eles estavam, né, achando difícil lidar com os próprios problemas, né? Então, eles não tinham como responder aí aos problemas internacionais, okay? And number three, you could argue that no organization could have stopped leaders like Mussolini or Hitler peacefully. Yeah, maybe even if the League of Nations were, I mean, successfully doing what they were supposed to do, maybe even in this situation, maybe, you know, the problem would be the same, but we don't know, right? So this is just possibility. Think about that here, okay? This is a very important sentence. And there is a comment about this second comment here, the depression. So the league was founded on internationalism. Analyze this word. You're gonna get closer here, okay? Internationalism. Why I'm gonna ask you to analyze? Because there is gonna have a question about that in the answer. I mean, in the question part. The idea that so the League was founded on internationalism, and what is that? The idea that countries should take collective action based on common interests, or it means that countries should work as a team. Instead of working together, the depression made countries more isolated. So if the initial idea was to work collectively, you know, work as a team. So when we had that depression, this economical crisis, and this big problem, I mean, money talking, right? Okay, so what happened? Yeah, I mean, probably consequently, yeah, what happened was that they got more and more isolated, which means that there were this problem with financial problem. They had no money, so they couldn't really, you know, like make things work out. And this, I think this is what happens, right? When countries have financial problems, I mean, it gets more difficult to do things together, to create new things, to make new things. Yeah, so this is what happened here, right? So this part here now that we have just read is the reading, right? Is the topic, is the article, is what we have to know about. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the questions. So just follow me and let's check it out. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so as we can see here, we have this second part, right, which is the collapse of the League of Nations, but questions. So follow me. Events in the 1930s had shown that the League of Nations had limited power, but several factors played a part in the organization's collapse, which means it was not only the fact that the League of Nations had this power limit, but also other things happened, and then it helped to get to the end of the League of Nations, to the collapse, okay? So try these activities to make sure you understand each factor. Okay, so let's begin with this number one here. And copy and complete the table below, giving details about the League of Nations successes and failures and disputes before 1939. Remember that disputes means fights, yeah, like battles that they have, okay? And as we can analyze here, we're gonna put the successes of the League here and the failures of the League here, okay? So just complete, go back into the reading, analyze, and then answer that. Remember, we have this hint here. Use information from the rest of this section to help you with questions 1 and 2. Very good. So going down a little, and we have 2 and 3. Do you think that the League achieved its aim of helping to solve social problems? Explain your answer. Okay, so let's go. Actually, just let's talk about this point here. Okay, let's get back to you. Okay, when we say that, do you think the League achieved it? I want to know your opinion. Okay, what do you think? Remember that in part of the reading, part of the things that we have read, okay, it says that okay, they helped some countries, you know, like regarding poverty, about like a food, about how can I say, healthy issues, right? But I mean, we saw some information about that, but what do you think? Do you think they did really a good job in that part? Even though we have to remember that it wasn't the main aim, the main goal of the League of Nations, but in this specific part, helping with social issues. When I say social, it means people's problems. When we focus on society, I'm not talking about war, battle between countries, or you know, it's about social problems, you know, the problems that we have like inside of the country. Okay, so they did a very good job regarding that. Yes or no? Explain that to me. Okay, so moving on. And we have here number 3. Write a definition for the term internationalism. Remember that I told you that we would do an activity about that word. So what is the meaning of internationalism? What is that? What I want you to answer for me? It's what is the definition of this word in this context? What context, teacher? In what we are studying? In the First World War, with this League of Nations and its problems, they used the word internationalism. So what they meant by that when they used this word, what they wanted to say. So check it out. That it is, I mean, if you want to check on Google more information, feel free to do that, but write a definition for me. Okay, and moving on, let's go on and going to the next part, right? We have here this second, and I believe is the last part. So thinking historically. Number 1, how did the outbreak of World War II affect the League of Nations? Explain your answer. Do you know this word, outbreak? What is the meaning of outbreak? This is homework. Send me the definition of outbreak, please. Okay, so but when you find it out, okay, so and then you can answer that, right? So do you think this affect the League of Nations? And explain. Number 2, copy and complete the mind map below, explaining how each factor contributed to the collapse of the League of Nations. Include as much detail as possible. So we have, I mean, the usual mind map, right? So the center, yeah, the main question here is, why did the League of Nations collapse? And then we have these 3 sides, and then of course we're gonna add more informations. For example, A, we have membership and structure. Membership was like, what, maybe I mean, you can talk about the members of, yeah, like, how about the members of the League of Nations? Who helped, who didn't help, what problems that they have, and what was the structure of that? What was the structure of the League of Nations itself? Do you remember how was it formed? Which countries, I mean, were part of that, and what were their goals in the beginning, at least, you know, like what was the main idea of that? This is some comments that you can make. And after that, we have the second part here, which is poor decisions. They had to make decisions, right? This was one of their works. So they made poor decisions. I mean, they made bad decisions. So please add some information about that. And see, external factors. Okay, external factors is things that happen in a, like beside, right? Outside of the League of Nations. So, and what I want you to comment is that, okay, for example, like Manchuria and Mussolini, right? It wasn't expected, you know, it happened outside of the League of Nations, and these facts and analyzing what was the act, right? What the League of Nations made, what they did about these situations that happened, and it was out of their control, of course. So tell me about that, you know, like if we analyze that, the situation outside and what the League of Nations did, so it helped, it didn't help, you know, like, I mean, to help in what, teacher? To the collapse of the League of Nations, because their decisions over the facts, over the external factors, right? These decisions helped to get to the end of the League of Nations, or no, it didn't. It had nothing to do with. So this is what I want you to comment for me, okay? And if we get back here, we can analyze very quickly. Here we have this, the same, right? The same hint. Use information from the rest of this section to support your answers. And we have this number 3 here, right? Let's analyze here, okay? This one, let me get a little closer. So, which of the 3 factors mentioned above do you think was most responsible for the collapse of the League of Nations? Explain your answer. So, after you describing, after making this, what is the name of that? This copy and complete, the mind map, right? This is the name that we use here. So after analyzing all the factors, which one do you think was maybe the biggest one, that took specifically to the end of the League of Nations, that really helped the League of Nations get to the end? That was like the biggest issue, the biggest problem, right? So choose one of the 3 and then tell me why do you think this specific one was the most responsible for that. This is what you have to do, okay? And let's do the last reading here, right? We have this last one. Let me share that with you. The League of Nations fail from this, oh, sorry. The League of Nations, that's the part here. Destined to fail from the start. So again, the League of Nations destined to fail from the start. So was it destined to fail, really? I mean, there was nothing that they could do. So in the exam, you will need to be able to discuss the causes of a certain development or event, you know, like something that may happen. So make sure you can explain all the different factors that led to the collapse of the league, okay? Make sure, what I want here is that, okay, why we have to answer this, why we have to read, what is it important? Number one, this is the way that you learn, improve your English, learn about history, okay, and make your writing, speaking, listening even better, okay? But the main point is that it's not only, oh, teacher, I can read that, I can understand more or less. No, but remember that, one way to check if you are really understanding is when you are able to explain, for example, as we have here, right? Make sure you can explain all the different factors. For example, give me all the facts that we had access here, Oh, tell me a little bit about the factors that led to the collapse of the leg, right? So this is the real meaning of the word teacher. I know, I understand, and I can explain it to you. So this is my goal for you, student, okay? Focus on, read carefully, take notes, okay? Make notes on your notebook. This is very important. It helps a lot when we talk about memorizing, okay? And then answer this from me, okay? So basically, that's it for today. Do your best, focus on, okay? Today we had a very, very good lesson, a very good topic. I mean, very well structured. Okay, so, I mean, enjoy that. It's not every day that we have access to so much rich content, right? So again, if you have questions, if you have anything, please send me a message, okay? I'm here for you. Thanks a lot, and see you next time. Take care, guys, and bye.